Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formats out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Hart, and it is, what do you think of the new Fighter Squadron mode in Star Wars Battlefronts? I honestly think it sounds amazing. For the people that aren't aware of what you're talking about or what you're referring to, DICE a couple of days ago just released a little article outlining some of the stuff that we could expect in the game, and one of them is this new game mode where you're going to be able to fly around in TIE fighters and X-Wings and have amazing aerial combats. And while I would have still preferred to have space combat because I personally think that would be easier to balance because you can just have a load of objects everywhere to block line of sight, what gives me hope about this one is that it sounds like they're balancing the maps or the maps that they're creating around the game mode itself. One of my biggest issues with air superiority in the Battlefield franchise is that they never designed the map around the game mode. They pretty much just put 20 jets on a conquest map and then said, have at it. The result of this is that it flopped in Battlefield 3. No one played it. They reintroduced it into Battlefield 4 without making any improvements to it, and once again, it was a huge failure. The reason why this happened is that there was nothing for you to hide behind. Essentially, you would fly into combat, you'd get locked on by an enemy, you'd activate your countermeasure, and then as soon as you were vulnerable, 20 enemies would instantly lock onto you and take you out with lock-on rockets. And because there isn't a rock formation, there isn't a plateau you can zip in and out of, as soon as you get locked on, it's pretty much a death sentence at that point. The combat was atrocious. Thankfully, it seems like DICE has finally learned their lesson from the Battlefield franchise, and the new Fighter Squadron game mode is going to be designed around these maps. Apparently, we've already seen some of the gameplay from this new mode. The one where they're in that huge canyon, the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter are having that duel up in the sky. That's going to be one of the maps. It's going to have a lot of different crevices, a nice elevation changes all over the place, and that sounds amazing. This is the type of map that we're looking for. Things that you can hide behind, canyons that you can dip into to block line of sight and hopefully get away from the enemy firefight. That is what I'm talking about. And while it's hard to say if it's going to work out entirely, it's hard to say if they have learned all of the lessons from their past mistakes. This gives me hope if the article is to be believed. And so overall, I am excited. I still would have preferred space battles, but I feel like this is a great alternative. They make this mode seem like it's going to be epic. They want it to be on a very grand scale. And so as long as there's a lot of elevation changes, as long as there's a lot of rock formations that you can hide behind, in general, I think that this could be an absolute blast. The next question comes from Tyler, and it is, what do you think about helicopters getting searchlights on the new night maps in Battlefield 4? I think that this is a marvelous idea, but admittedly, there's kind of already searchlights on the vehicles right now, but not to the extent that you're really looking for. I'm assuming what you mean by searchlights is that if you're in a helicopter, you can point this thing around or maybe position your helicopter where you can see and illuminate the ground below you and maybe see and take out some infantry. That sounds really cool in concept. The thing that they have right now in the CTE on these night maps is that if you're in a helicopter, there is a flashlight or a quote-unquote searchlight in front of it, or if you're in the minigun in the transport helicopter, but it doesn't do a lot of illumination. If you're close to the ground, here's a good example of it, you will see the flashlight, but as soon as you rise a little bit up, as soon as you get some elevation, you can't see that flashlight whatsoever. I think the main reason why they have this mechanic in the game isn't for the benefit of the pilots, but it's more for the people down on the ground. If you're getting shot at from seemingly nowhere, a helicopter has a pinpoint location of where you're at, but you don't know where that helicopter is because you look up and you just see a black void, that would get frustrating very, very quickly. And so DICE added in flashlights for all the vehicles. This includes the tanks because tanks were really hard to pinpoint as well. And this is one of the ways that infantry can acquire those targets and hopefully either duck behind cover or take them out with a Stinger missile. And so in my opinion, while I really like this, I think this is a great mechanical addition to the game. It's a very smart on DICE's part. It would be really cool if those spotlights had more of a function function for the player that was using them. If you're in the minigun position in the transport helicopter, it would be cool if you could spot everyone down on the ground or have a searchlight essentially at the end of the barrel and illuminate all of your targets. Like, that just sounds cool. The lighting effects already on the night maps are phenomenal, and I think if they took it a step further with these flashlights, it would be simply amazing. And so while it's kind of already in the game to some extent, it's more just for players to acquire targets and to identify helicopter threats up in the sky. I would love it if DICE pushed it a step further, made it so that you could really illuminate the ground below you, and while it's hard to say if they ever will decide to do it, I think it is a marvelous idea. The next question comes from Tristan, and it is, do you think that DICE should bring back the M16A3 into Battlefield 4? I think it's a good idea, but what are your thoughts? I would not be opposed to this as long as it was well balanced. Back in Battlefield 3, it was basically a must pick on the battlefield. There was a lot of weapon variety in there. You didn't necessarily have to use the M16A3, but if you want to be competitive, if you wanted a gun that was basically good in every single type of combat scenario, medium, short, or long range, because of that RPM and it's very easy to manage recoil, you could dominate the competition. I think what it really just comes down to, and the main reason why DICE hasn't added in this weapon yet, is that there are already a lot of weapons for the assault class that are very similar stat-wise to what we had back in Battlefield 3 with the M16A3. The Ace-23 is probably the most similar. Very similar rounds per minute, recoil, damage model, all of it is very similar. A couple of them are slightly different here and there, but for the most part, if they did add in the M16A3, it would pretty much just be a weapon skin. I think a lot of people would be excited about it because it is a very iconic weapon. It would be cool to use it on the battlefield, but gameplay-wise, it wouldn't mix it up all that much. This is something that DICE wants to have when they add in new weapons. They basically came out and said, this is one of the main reasons why we're getting all the weapons that we are getting in the new Weapons Crate DLC. The AN-94, to give you an example, is a burst fire gun. Don't have a lot of burst fire weapons in Battlefield 4. The Groza weapons are bullpup. Don't have a lot of bullpup carbines in the game. They want to make sure that weapons that they add into the game have a unique property, that they're distinctive from all of the others, so that it isn't just a reskin of another gun with a few stats tweaked here and there, and it can add in some unique gameplay. And so I think it's for this very reason that while, yes, I would love to have an M16A3, it's an amazing weapon, I just love the way it looks. It doesn't provide a unique enough gameplay for, I think, DICE to warrant adding it on into the game. The next question comes from Mike, and it is, what do you think about giving the Enforcer class the armored insert instead of the mechanic in Battlefield Hardline? I feel like the mechanic is a dominant force in close quarters, and it doesn't need further assistance in that regard. In my opinion, I actually like the fact that the mechanic dominates up close. Like, I think that it's great that they do really well because that's what their weapons are made for. One of my biggest critiques with Battlefield 4's Engineer is that while I love that class, clearly you guys see me play it all the time, their weapons are only alright up close. Like, they do really well. They're about equal in their power against a lot of the assault rifles, like the AEK, for example. But as soon as the enemy gets further and further away from you, that equal playing field that you have all of a sudden diminishes. The assault rifles, LMGs, and carbines get a massive lead. They have the advantage, and they just mop the floor with you. And so the fact that in a hardline, this class and these weapons have an awesome advantage, I think is a good thing. Like, I think that's a good gameplay decision. On the other hand, though, I do agree with you to some extent that the armored insert should be taken away from the mechanic because reducing damage by 50% is just ridiculous. Like, that's just stupid. Like, when we get down to it, 50% damage reduction if someone hits you in the chest is game-changing. You come across someone who's using the same exact weapon as you are, you have in the armored insert, they put one bolt in your chest, you win. Like, you flat out win. Same skill, you start the firefight at the same time. That gadget is going to make you come in that firefight alive. Like, that is ridiculously powerful, but I don't even think that it should go over to the Enforcer class. I flat out think that it should be removed from the game. I'm in the mindset that there shouldn't be anything in a first-person shooter that reduces weapon damage or increases weapon damage. If you have something like that in the game, people are going to gravitate towards it because it gives you an inherent advantage on the battlefield. And so while I realize I've talked about this topic kind of in the past with like Bad Company 2, talked about other like Magnum ammo into that sort, yeah, I just think that no, it shouldn't be added over into the Enforcer class. It should just be flat out removed from the game. Just my 2 cents though. But But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. As always, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook and Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.